Preliminary announcement. Yes, I saw the E3 trailer, and no, it doesn't disprove the theory. Wait till the end of the video to see why. Did you all see that gameplay for Sonic Forces? A non-prototype Egg Dragoon? Awesome! And they're bringing back Silver and Shadow? I know I say this a whole lot, but hype! Okay, so to recap last episode, since it was a whole lot, Lost World and Forces are two alternate timelines split by the events and generations, and both are sequels to Colors. Also, alternate timelines are an option now. Also, Drop Dash. On to this episode! So when I saw the Drop Dash in the Forces gameplay video, and there was a lot of it in the E3 gameplay which only confirmed the theory, I immediately knew something was up. So I did some digging with all the information I had on hand at the time and found something of interest in the trailer for the Nintendo Switch. In that trailer, the narrator specifically refers to Forces Classic Sonic as an alternate Sonic summoned to this dimension by Dr. Eggman.
And who is this alternate version of Sonic, summoned to this world by Eggman?
This was also referenced by Eggman's voice clip in the fight with the Egg Dragoon in the E3 gameplay.
You've got a lot of nerve for a bite-sized Sonic from another dimension.
When I heard that, my mind went to the first part of the theory, and I realized that there was something I was overlooking the entire time. The key question I'd never even considered before, and I'm pretty certain that not many people in the Sonic community have thought of this either. When did the classic Sonic from Generations come from? Now, while this question might seem completely unrelated at first, the answer explains everything. Hello Internet, this is Mattcast, coming at you from another episode of Theory Hour. And in this episode, I'm going to explain why the Sonic from Sonic Mania and the classic Sonic from Sonic Forces are the same Sonic, and how Sonic Mania is part of an alternate timeline caused by the time-splitting effects in Sonic Generations, and how this will allow the developers of Sonic games to experiment with the franchise while still giving their returning fans what they want out of the series. Oh, and I'm also going to cover the E3 stuff at the end of the video, so stick around for that. Okay, let's start with answering the question of when the classic Sonic from Generations is from, since that's the basis for this whole argument. Even though the whole thing stems from the Drop Dash, but I'll cover that later. So I recalled that Eggman finding the Time Eater after the events of Sonic Colors was the source of the timeline split in the modern era. This established in my mind that the Sonics from Generations might both be from points in the timeline where time is strained, and so I decided to pursue that. Modern Sonic is from the point when Eggman found the Time Eater, so that's that accounted for. Classic Sonic gave me a bit more trouble, so I decided to do some cold hard analysis of Generations Classic Sonic. When Classic Sonic first appears, he's running in Green Hill Zone. This alone doesn't give me too much to go on, especially since Sonic returns to Green Hill Zone every other game. However, one important thing to note is that he's still using his classic design. I know it seems obvious, but it narrows things down immensely. This restricted my range of games to Sonic 1 through Sonic 3 and Knuckles. He also appears alongside classic Tails, and they appear to know each other fairly well, so this restricts it from after Sonic 2 to before Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And wouldn't you know it, there is a game in this time frame that strains time, Sonic CD. And as for why classic Amy doesn't show up in Generations, remember, she doesn't appear in Sonic 3 and Knuckles either, so that doesn't really mean anything. So I move forward on the assumption that the classic Sonic in Generations was from after Sonic CD, and time was still under some stress after the events of that game. This opened up the idea that there could be a timeline split at that time, splitting it into the timeline the modern games proceed from, and another currently unnamed timeline. Leaving this point for a second, let's establish several important things. First, the Sonic in Sonic 3 and Knuckles doesn't know how to do a drop dash. It doesn't really take a genius to figure that out, I know, but it's an important thing to recognize, especially because... Second, the Sonic in Mania does know how to drop dash. Again, it seems obvious, and it is, but it's a very important point to establish. Third, Flying Battery Zone appears in both Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania, and appears similar in both, with enhancements in Mania. Fourth, Sonic and Knuckles are allies in Mania, but enemies in 3 and Knuckles. With all these things in mind, I stitched them together like this. A timeline split occurs after the events of Sonic CD, after the events of Generations have messed things up enough. One timeline proceeds as normal, where Eggman crash lands on Angel Island, tricks Knuckles, and starts building the new Death Egg. This is the standard timeline. The other timeline, which I'm going to call the Drop Dash timeline for reasons that will shortly become obvious, takes a different route. Eggman crashes on Angel Island as usual, but this time when he tries to trick Knuckles, it doesn't work, and he's driven off the island without constructing his new Death Egg, and instead works on fortifying his already established headquarters and invading new zones. This explains how Flying Battery Zone got so much of an upgrade in Mania, as well as why there are new zones, as well as why Sonic and Knuckles are working together in Mania instead of fighting like in 3 and Knuckles. Now you might be saying to yourselves, but Mattcast, why does it have to be a timeline split? Why can't Mania just be a sequel to 3 and Knuckles? You've given some reasons, but definitely not enough to justify it. And in response, I implore you to remember, this isn't just some average theory show. This is Theory Hour. I'm definitely not going to leave it at just that. If you're not convinced yet, just wait, because this next point is going to blow your mind. Remember how I made a big deal about emphasizing that Forces Classic Sonic was an alternate Sonic from another dimension at the beginning of the video? Well, if we admit that the standard timeline and the Drop Dash timeline are 2 separate timelines, then Mania Sonic suddenly becomes an alternate Sonic from another dimension. Note that I'm equating the words timeline and dimension since they're used so interchangeably in modern fiction. And it comes full circle. I'm telling you, this theory explains literally everything. And not only does it explain everything, it also shows how Sonic Team is going to go forward with how they handle the Sonic franchise, and why it's freaking smart! Here's what I mean. Back during the time after Generations, many people thought the Sonic series would start to compartmentalize itself, as it were, making classic games for fans of the Genesis era, featuring the classic Sonic gameplay from Generations, and making modern games for fans of the Boost formula. Then Sonic Lost World dropped, surprising everyone, and it seemed like that idea was kinda dead. And then after the Sonic Boom franchise existed, it seemed like the modern and classic division had been raised from its grave, shot 15 more times, and then cremated. However, thanks to these 2 games, that idea of compartmentalization definitely wasn't dead. In fact, it had more life than ever. See, now Sonic Team had not only 2 different gameplay styles to work with, but 4. Sonic Boom for whatever the heck it wanted to do. Lost World's timeline for more experimental modern games, the modern gameplay for Boost formula games, and the classic gameplay for Genesis-style games. All they need to do was create a game to connect the timelines, aside from Boom because that was sort of its own thing, not really Sonic Team's, and a game to start the new line of classic games, the Drop Dash timeline. Those became, respectively, Sonic Forces and Sonic Mania. And if you think I'm making jumps in logic with this thought, I point you to the start of development for Sonic Forces, right after Lost World. They knew what they were doing, we just didn't know it until recently. And as for why I'm not worried about Zavok in the E3 trailer, since Dr. Eggman used this weird cube power creature, I still don't know what the heck that is, to bring Mania's classic Sonic from another timeline, and since I've said that Lost World is a different timeline, it's actually highly likely that Eggman just used the cube guy to bring the biggest bad guy from the Lost World timeline to that of Forces. And if that's too much of a stretch for you, just remember, even though the events of Lost World didn't happen in the Forces timeline, that doesn't mean the Lost Hex doesn't still exist in it. Eggman could have just used the magic conch to take command of Zavok like he did in Lost World. And that's the theory. Jeez man, I've never done a 2-parter before, though that's not saying much since this is only episode 5 of the series. But anyway, this was fun though. Oh, and there hasn't been any evidence to the contrary yet, so who knows? Maybe I'm right. Anyway, as usual, thank you very much for watching. It means a lot. Make sure if you like the video to like, comment, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. Maybe even share it with Aaron Weber, the head of public interactions for Sonic. Also, if you like this video, you might like some of the other stuff from 123Go, which you can check out with the links on screen right now, and maybe you'd even consider subscribing. Anyway, have a good one, and remember, stay theory, my friends.